Our next guest, Garnet Schulhauser. He's published 5 books in the spiritual metaphysical genre, and these recount his whole dialogue in astral travels with his spirit guide, Albert.
I was a typical corporate lawyer, Connie, before I met my spirit guide. I was arrogant, condescending, typical sort of walking around in three-piece Navy suits kind of thing. And I wasn't religious or wasn't spiritual. I didn't even know if I had a spirit guide until I met Albert. And then my whole life just transformed, and it's been an amazing journey. It was back in May of 2007. I was still practicing law, and I was walking down the street one sunny afternoon, and all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped out in front of me, just stood right in front of me, stopped me in my tracks. And he looked like a typical homeless man. He had long, stringy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty, slept-in clothes. And instead of walking around him, as I usually would with these people that I see on the street, the homeless people, I stood there frozen because he had these amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes that shone like 2 little blue stars. And he was looking at me. I felt like he was looking right down into the depths of my soul, and that he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done in my life, which was strange because I'd never met the man before. But I didn't feel violated because at the same time, his gaze was sending me this gush, this wave of what I would describe as pure, unconditional love. And this unconditional love was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. I'd never felt this good any time before in my life. It was an amazing feeling. So I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights, and it was almost like a time warp. I had no idea how long I stood there, and all of a sudden he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" Then he immediately disappeared into a nearby store. Well, when I finally collected my wits, I went into the store to try to find him. There was only one entrance. I went in the store. He was nowhere to be seen. I went back out in the street, and I walked up and down for several blocks, but he had disappeared into thin air. So that night I resolved I was going to go back to the same street the next day to see if I can find him, which I did. Same street, same time of day. I walked up and down for 10, 15 minutes. I was about to give up hope when I spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. So I went up to him and I said to him, "Who are you and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in, and I said, "Well, why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because it looks like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks, and you smell like a dead fish." Well, he just gave me a big smile, and he said, "Looks can be deceiving because you look like you're a successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade. So you can turn around if you want, go back to your office, and see if you can find the answers to all those big eternal life questions you've been asking all your life. See if you can find those answers in all those emails from your clients waiting on your computer. Or you can sit down and have a chat with me." So luckily my intuition was screaming at me that I had to sit down and talk to this man. And so I did. I sat down and we began a conversation. He said his name was Albert. He was one of my spirit guides. And that began an adventure that went on for many years. And it was an amazing adventure. It was a dialogue and then subsequent astral travels. So that's how it all began. I actually said to Albert after, I said, "What would you have done if I had just turned away and gone away? Would you have chased me? Would you have come back for me? Would you have appeared in different form?" He says, that's a hypothetical I don't need to answer because luckily you passed the test. And the test was, could I sit down and talk to a dirty, scrubby homeless man as opposed to, say, if he had appeared to me in a three-piece business suit. And so I did pass the test, fortunately, so lucky for me.
So what happened from there?
Well, we began a conversation, a dialogue, basically. I would ask him questions, and he would answer, and the dialogue went off and on for several months. The first 3 times he appeared to me as the homeless man. After that, he was just a voice in my head, and we communicated by telepathy. And when I asked him, why did he show up in my life initially as the homeless man? And he said, "Well, if I had suddenly, out of the blue, started talking to you as a voice in your head, you likely would have thought you're losing your mind. So I had to introduce you to me in a more gradual way so that you can see that I was a homeless man. I could see him. I could touch him." The other interesting thing he told me was that I was the only one who could see him. So if somebody had been walking by the bench that day in that street, they would have seen me sitting there by myself, talking to myself because I couldn't see him.
So
So
when
basically, the dialogue was basically I would ask him questions, he'd answer, and he answered all the big questions of life that we all ask ourselves at one point or another, like who am I, who put me here, what's my life purpose, and the big one, of course, is what happens to me when I die. I mean, is there an afterlife, or do I disappear into nothingness? Those are the questions that I asked him. He answered in a very truthful and clear manner. And as soon as he started answering, I just knew exactly that what he was telling me was the truth. I had no doubt whatsoever.
how were those first conversations happening? Were they always on the bench? Would you just go there at like 3 in the afternoon every time?
The first one was on the bench. The second time he appeared in person was it was one afternoon in my backyard, and there was nobody else home, and I looked out onto the deck, and there he was sitting there. So that was the second time. And all the other times were by telepathy, which it could just happen anywhere, but most of the time I'd be sitting in my office just in a light meditation, and then he'd come through and we'd have our telepathic conversation. And so for the first few months, that was a dialogue by telepathy. The astral travels came a little bit later in a much different format.
When you did see him, you saw him just as a real person.
He looked like a real person. I touched him. He felt like a real person. And I didn't know at the time that I was the only one who could see him. But yeah, he looked very much like a real person. He had the whole homeless person disguise, even the smell. As I mentioned, he smelled like a dead fish. Yeah, he really did it well, and he really got my attention. He was my spirit guide. At the time, I didn't even know I had spirit guides, so it was totally new to me, but he certainly educated me. And then early on in the conversation, he said, guess what? I'm not just here to satisfy your curiosity. I want you to write a book about what I revealed to you. And that really put me on my ass because I had never even dreamed of writing a book. I was busy practicing law. I had no time or energy to think about writing a book. But you know what? He prevailed. Approximately a year after I met him, I retired from the law because it just didn't make any sense to me. It wasn't relevant anymore. And so then I proceeded to continue the conversation and go about writing the manuscript for my first book, which is Dancing on a Stamp.
When you said he was your spirit guide, what is a spirit guide? Tell me that. How did you know that as well, that he was your spirit guide?
Well, I didn't know about spirit guides before I met him, but he told me that he was my spirit guide. Then he explained it to me. Spirit guides are basically like our coaches beyond the veil in the spirit realm, and everyone has several spirit guides, and these are all arranged before we incarnate. And the spirit guides are there, as I said, like our coaches. And so what happens is that they know what's in our life plan as we move through our life, because we don't know what's in our life plan. They're always sending us messages to try to steer us on the right course. The right course being the one that we had planned for ourselves. The trouble is that for most people, their messages are very subtle. They're like flashes of intuition, whispers in our mind, coincidental events, gut feelings, things like that. And so it's very difficult for most people to hear the messages and discern where they're coming from, and then to understand what they're supposed to do about it. And so he came to me, and he was speaking to me directly, like you and I are speaking, which is very unusual, but he said he's doing it that way so that I could clearly understand what he's saying so I could write my books. And so that's why I have this special connection. But our spirit guides are always with us 24/7, and they're really trying to help us have the best journey that we possibly can on planet Earth. And so, everyone has them. Not many people are aware of them. I certainly got a big dose of it when I met Albert as a homeless man, but most of us, most humans, don't get that opportunity.
How do you know that this isn't something trying to deceive you?
I just know in my heart. It's just one of those things. What he said just rang true. I had no doubt about it, and it's hard, whether it's intuition or gut feeling. I just knew that what he was saying was true. That he was my spirit guide. He wasn't trying to deceive me, and I've never ever felt that he's ever told me an untruth or tried to deceive me in any way. And so I've total confidence in him. And I think that's what he intended. He wanted to win my confidence, and he did very quickly. And he's never shaken my faith whatsoever. So it's one of those things you just know it, Connie. And I did know it when I was talking to him and when I had my astral trips with him. I just knew that he was the real McCoy.
Can you just kind of talk to him at any time and go, "Hey, are you here listening to the show?"
I don't talk to him. He doesn't talk to me during these shows, but I know that he's hovering around there. He's always hovering around. And he'll probably give me a critique after the show.
You said he's got a really good sense of humor.
Yeah, he does. And it's interesting because surprisingly to a lot of people, I think, the spirit side or heaven, whatever you want to call it, it's not a somber place. Humor is alive and well, and there's lots of jokes and pranks and stuff like that. They really enjoy the humor. Albert in particular, he really likes to poke fun at me. He likes to tease me about my many human foibles, and he's always very good at it. And even though I'll try to sort of hit back at him, he always tells me that in a battle of wits with him, I have no ammunition, so I shouldn't even bother. But in any event, many times when he's trying to explain a very esoteric concept to me that I don't seem to understand, he'll say to me, well, don't worry about it because you have to deal with the limitations of your puny human mind. So those are the kind of things that he's always shooting at me, and I'm used to it. And his humor, I put it in my books because I think it's good for people to know sort of his true nature. So he's not like some religious saint that's very somber. He's really a funny guy and a wise guy, and I really enjoy talking to him.
So Albert shows up in your bedroom at one point, right? What was that like?
Well, yeah, I was startled. I mean, I was sound asleep, and something made me wake up. I sat up in bed, and I could see this ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and I'm like, what is this, And then it moved closer to me, closer to my bed. Then I could see it was Albert, but he was in astral form. So he still had the same homeless man get up, but he was in astral form, like semi-transparent. And I said, well, hi, Albert, what brings you here? What's up? He says, I've come to take you on a series of astral trips, out-of-body adventures, because I want you to write about what you see and hear on these trips in your next books. And I said, what next books? And he said, well, you're going to write 4 or 5 more. I was like, wow. Okay, so by now I'm used to following orders from Albert. So then he just literally reached out and he grabbed my astral hand, pulled my astral body out of my physical body. I turned around and looked, and I could see my physical body was still sound asleep in bed.
Oh.
And he said, come follow me. So I just, hand in hand, we rose up to the ceiling, way up above our beautiful planet. He allowed me to sort of turn around and have a look at our beautiful planet from a very high perspective, and it's an amazing view. We live on a very beautiful planet. It was like a jeweled pendant floating in the inky blackness of space. It was just amazing. And then we went to the spirit side. Spirit side is where we all come from. That's our home. We all start off there. We incarnate on Earth, and we all go back there. The spirit side's a beautiful place. There's nothing but unconditional love. There's no pain, suffering. We don't have to eat, drink, breathe, or do any of that sort of stuff that physical people do. Amazing place. First stop on the spirit side was this beautiful meadow, incredibly beautiful. Like it's hard to even describe it in words, but it was wildflowers and grass and majestic trees and the whole trek. It was amazing. So he took me up a path. We went to the top of the hill. At the bottom of the hill, I could see a group of people standing on the bottom of the hill. And as we got closer, my heart skipped a beat because I recognized who they were. They were my mother, father, brother, aunts and uncles, grandparents who had all predeceased me. There they were. And I walked up to them, and they just surrounded me and wrapped me in their arms and gave me unconditional love and said, welcome, nice to see you. And he said to me, this was a preview of what everyone will experience when they transition back to the spirit side, which is what he called the welcoming party. Your welcoming party would be the first ones to greet you when you cross over, just to make you feel comfortable and welcome and warm. And so that was just an amazing experience. I was a bit concerned about meeting my mother because she was a very staunch Roman Catholic, and that's how I was raised. And she was very religious. And what I wrote in my first book, Dancing on a Stamp, I wasn't kind to the Catholic Church, so I thought, what's my mom going to say? But she allayed my fears. She just said, everything's okay. She said, if I was still on planet Earth, I'd be very upset with you about what you wrote about the church. But now that I'm here, I can see the big perspective of everything, and you did a good job. And so I was like, that's great. That's a relief. I wasn't sure what my mother was going to say. And then from there, he took me into this beautiful white city called Aglaia. All the buildings were white, sparkling, beautiful white buildings, all different sizes and shapes. And that was one of the cities in the spirit side. It was called Aglaia. And from there, he took me to visit the Council of Wise Ones.
What are they wise about?
Oh, well, they're very wise and advanced souls. And they've all had this council consisted of 11 very elderly-looking. They all had snow-white hair and smooth, unblemished skin. And there was 11 of them sitting around sort of a semicircle table. The chair of the council was a lady named Sophia, and Albert explained to me the Council of Wise Ones is the group that oversees all the incarnations on planet Earth. And so that's their job, is to make sure that things are working well in terms of the incarnation. So what happens is that when a soul is planning a life on planet Earth, preparing a life plan, somebody from the council will review the life plan to make sure it's appropriate for the soul based upon their development and what they've experienced beforehand. So they want to make sure that the life they're planning for themselves isn't too harsh, because then they won't learn anything, or that it's not too easy, because then they won't learn anything either. And so they sort of give guidance in terms of people incarnating on planet Earth. And they've all had many incarnations, as I said, so they know what planet Earth is like. They know that the Earth school is a tough school, and so they're there to sort of give guidance to the souls who are planning to incarnate. So you don't remember it, and I don't remember it either, but we both had interaction with somebody from the council before we incarnated. So that's their job. But they had a message for me, and their message was really this. They said that humanity is at a very crucial crossroads, that we've developed very advanced technology, but our spiritual and emotional intelligence has not kept pace. So because of our technology, we have the capability of wiping out all life on our planet with our weapons of mass destruction. And so they said it's very crucial that we don't let that happen, because that's the civilizations on Earth have risen up before in our history and then crashed and burned, like Atlantis, Lemuria, and many that we don't even know about. And they don't want that to happen to our civilization. So they wanted the message to get back to humanity that what we really need to do is curtail and stifle our negative emotions like fear, anger, hate, greed. Those emotions cause all the problems in our world, the wars, the genocide, the crime, and we need to sort of curtail those, and we need to fully embrace love, compassion, and forgiveness. And if we can do that, our planet will be a much happier place to live, and we won't end up destroying ourselves. So they wanted me to take that message back to my fellow humans through my books. I mean, there's a lot of people who on our planet who just don't realize that negative emotions out of control are causing all the problems, and if we just realize that we need to discard those and embrace love and compassion, we'll have a much better place to live. So they wanted me to put that in my books so that whoever read the books might ring a bell, and they might think, okay, well, maybe I should start to be a better person, and it has to happen one person at a time. You have to sort of embrace love and compassion, and then do the same to your family and to your friends and your coworkers and your neighbors, and hopefully there will be a ripple effect, a positive ripple effect to make the world a better place. We have a long ways to go, Connie, as you know, but it has to start somewhere.
How come we were given those emotions in the first place? If they're even saying, and they're the wise ones, take those away, we got to, stop that.
That's just part of how humans are made, and it's part of the fact that we have free will on this planet, so that we don't remember where we come from, we don't remember what we put in our life plan, and so we're here kind of floundering around a bit blindly because we don't really know what we should be doing or where we're going or where we came from. And so negative emotions are just part of humanity on planet Earth. Earth is one of the toughest schools in the universe, and that's why it's so tough, is because we have these negative emotions that can get out of control, and then we do all kinds of harmful things to each other, not just to each other, but to the other creatures on our planet and to Mother Earth herself with our pollution. And so they're really concerned about that, but that's something that we have to live with. Before we incarnated, we knew what humans were like. We were incarnating into human bodies, so we knew basically what humans were like, because you could watch through the history of humans on our planet to see how they acted. So we knew exactly what we're getting into. We all came to say, well, okay, we can do better than that. We can incarnate and try to make this place a better place to live, and that's why we all came here. But obviously it's not working very well. It hasn't over the years, although we have improved a lot. But it's a matter of it's just part of the human nature, unfortunately.
When they say they want to take that negative away, are they doing anything about it, or are they just kind of hoping and wishing and giving you information as well as other information for people to say out loud for them?
Yeah, apparently they've been sending a wave of what they call very experienced advanced souls. A lot of them maybe have never incarnated on Earth before. They've incarnated on different planets, different star systems, and so they're trying to recruit a lot of these souls to say, hey, please come to planet Earth. We need you to come here to incarnate. so that you can, with your positive energy, once you get on planet Earth, you can try to change things around for humans. And so they're really making an effort to try to get the message across. And they do it through various sources. They do it through radio hosts. They do it through book writers, people who speak at conferences. They're trying to get the message out so more and more people will hear about what we need to do to change things. And that's really what they're doing. I mean, they have amazing powers, and they could just change everything overnight if they wanted to. They could just wipe out all of our weapons and change all that, but that'd make it too easy. The reason that Earth School is attractive to a lot of souls is that it is so tough, and it's sort of like, okay, it's like the people who say, I want to climb Mount Everest. It's really tough. You could die. So souls who incarnate on Earth know it's going to be really tough, and it's not going to be any walk in the park. And as Albert has told me many times, every human should pat themselves on the back for being so courageous as to come to this very tough school. And so we know what we're getting into, and we're all trying to help it become a better place, and we just have to work hard at it. And Albert has told me, when I said, well, why can't we know why we're here? Why can't we know what we're supposed to be doing, what we put in our life plan? He said, well, that would be too easy. It would be like a teacher giving her students the questions and answers to a final exam before the exam. Like, what's the point of writing it? So the forgetfulness is very deliberate, so that we have to sort of work through things without really knowing the whole picture. And we'll get the whole picture back when we go back to the spirit side, but here on Earth, we have to deal with our free will, not only our free will, but everyone else has free will. And so we're always in a clash of free wills among all the humans, and you can see that every day. If you listen to the news, you can see exactly what's happening.
I think Albert told you that animals reincarnate, and you could choose to be an animal or vice versa. Was that right? Did I read that right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Early on in my conversation, I said to Albert, we were talking about incarnation and so on, and I said to Albert, do animals have souls? And he said, you need only look into the eyes of your little dog to find your answer.
Yeah,
and the answer was, of course, yes. The animals have souls, and their souls are the same as ours. I mean, a lot of humans have probably incarnated into animals before their first human incarnation, because if you're sort of concerned about planet Earth and how tough it is, you might want to dip your toe into the water gradually by doing incarnation into an animal, because they have much simpler lives. Like a rabbit doesn't have to worry about mortgage payments or a job or a career or saving for retirement or putting their kids through college. All they have to do is worry about where's my next meal and how do I avoid getting eaten by a fox. So much simpler. Humans have much more complex lives. So anyone who's a human now, they may have had animal incarnations before, but they're probably not going to go back to being an animal because it would be much too easy, much too simpler.
Are you married?
Yes.
Was your wife with you during all this?
No, she's never. She wasn't with me when Albert was around, and she's never heard Albert communicate. So I've talked to her about it, but she wasn't part of it, though.
She was in your life when this was all happening, though.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We'd been married for quite a few years. She's a very spiritual person, and when I told her, and I broke her into gently, I said, I'm going to write a book, and then and she said, okay, and then I said, I'm going to write a book about my spirit guide, and she says, yeah, okay. So I broke her into it gradually, and she was very supportive, and she's like, okay, she knew all this stuff, and so she wasn't a bit disturbed.
What did you think were the coolest things that he did for you and the coolest places he took you?
Well, he did. I think the coolest places, Connie, was but he took me to a couple of human civilizations on different planets that were quite different than planet Earth. And I had asked him whether humans existed elsewhere, and he said, yeah, for sure. So one of them was, and you'll get a kick out of this, Connie, and all your female listeners, was a matriarchal planet. This planet was run entirely by women. Now, they were humans just like us. It was a very modern society. They had flying cars and moving sidewalks and everything else, but it was entirely run by women. Men were not allowed to have any position of authority or power, political or business or otherwise. They didn't really do anything. They're just very docile and deferential. Why was this so? Because their testosterone level was basically zero. And how this came about was that many years before, they had been basically a patriarchal society where women were subjected and abused, not dissimilar to some of the countries that we have on planet Earth. And then one day a woman had a dream where she was told that there's a plant in the forest that if you give it to the men, it will just drop their testosterone level way down. So gradually over time they fed this plant to the men, and the men became very docile, very deferential. They let the women run the society. They didn't care because they could just go ahead and do their recreational sports, and the women ran the whole place, and the men were just they weren't abused. They could just have very happy lives, but they couldn't have any position of power or authority. And the women were, the women, they did have their disagreements, but the women managed to resolve them all in a very friendly fashion, so there were no wars or crime or anything else. And then after a while, they realized that having men with low testosterone levels really made their planet work really well. And so then basically after the plant thing, they set about sterilizing chemically all male children at the age of 3. And so they had basically no testosterone. They kept a few of them to feed their sperm bank, which is how they procreated, but they didn't have sex. The sperm was in the sperm bank, and the women were all artificially inseminated. And so I thought it was a very happy society, and the men didn't seem to care. And I said we met with the Empress there, who was elected by all the women, and I said, do the men miss having a sex drive? And she said no, because they don't ever remember having one, so they don't. They never knew they had a sex drive. So it was a very happy sort of society. When I left that planet with Albert, I said to Albert, has this planet ever visited planet Earth? Have these humans visited planet Earth? And he said, no, they hadn't yet learned how to travel between the stars. And I said, oh, thank God. I was afraid I'd have to rush back to Earth to warn all the men so that we didn't all end up singing like the Vienna Boys Choir. And then there was another sort of an equally balanced planet. It was a very advanced planet of humans again. And they had developed high technology. They could travel between the stars. And men and women were absolutely equal in every sense. There was no differential between them. The people there didn't really need to work because their collective provided everything for them, and they were all very robust and healthy. And they had no negative emotions. And the reason for that was that because on that planet a long time ago, their scientists had discovered that the negative emotions were the result of a defective gene. And so after a while, through selective genetic engineering, they managed to eradicate that gene. So in their planet, there was no negative emotions, which was great. And they were all very healthy because the other thing they had developed, which I really liked, and I wished we had it, was they had what they called a diet pill. So if someone took this pill, that person could eat as much as they wanted to, any kind of food, desserts, cheeseburgers, whatever, decadent food, and not gain an ounce of weight or have any extra cholesterol. So they're all robust and healthy, but they enjoyed eating and drinking. And I said, wow, this is great. Can you give me the recipe for this pill? And they said, no, we could, but we're not going to give it to you because you have to figure it out yourself, meaning humans on Earth have to. But what I learned from this utopian planet is that there is hope for us because long time ago, they had negative emotions and they had crime and wars and all the stuff that we have. But because they figured out how to get rid of this defective gene, they now had a very happy and harmonious society. And so there's hope for us. We just have to be able to find how to do this genetic engineering, and maybe we will one day. Don't know.
What is it that we should embrace the most as Earthlings, as humans?
Well, there's only one. The one thing we should embrace is love, compassion, forgiveness. That's it. If we all embrace love, the negative emotions will melt away like a snowbank in the spring. They'll just disappear because you can't have your being full of love and still have negative emotions. The two can't really coexist. So that's what we need to focus on is love for everything, love for ourselves, love for our family, coworkers, all other humans, and for the other animals on our planet, and for Mother Earth herself. And if we extend this love, then that's where we want to go. That we'll end up with a society like that planet that I visited, and that's something that we should really strive for.
You mentioned New Earth. Tell us about New Earth.
Yeah, well, New Earth is our planet in a higher dimension, a higher vibrational dimension, and it exists coextensively with our planet. It's not something to come. It's always been there, just at a much higher vibration. And I did make a visit there with Albert, and it's much like that utopian society. They don't have any negative emotions. They have managed to find out how to repair injured bodies and do away with diseases, and so they all lived for like 200 or 300 years. There was no crime or conflict or anything else. They ate only liquid food manufactured from plants, so they didn't kill any animals, and it was a very happy society. And I met with a group of people. Their ancestors had been on planet Earth in Central America, and they had a sort of a happy village way back when. One day their scouts discovered that there was a barbaric army encroaching on their territory, and this army was fearsome and warlike, and they had weapons. And these people in the village didn't have anything to combat that, so their elders got together and they did sort of a group meditation together, and with the help of spirit, they all ascended up to the new Earth. And so their ancestors actually come from planet Earth. But our humans on planet Earth right now can ascend to the new Earth. All you have to do is raise your vibrations high enough to match the vibration level of the new Earth, and then you just ascend up just automatically. Be like if you hold a cork underwater and release it, it just pops up to the surface. And so the theory is very simple. Trying to raise your vibrations is difficult. To do that, you have to embrace love and compassion, forgiveness, and stifle your negative emotions. And if you can do that, then you, in fact, can ascend. And I actually did meet, in one of my trips to the spirit side, I met with a lady who had done the ascension. And what had happened to her was that she had been happily married with 2 young children. One day, a drunk driver T-boned her husband and her children and killed them all. And she just spiraled down into the depths of depression and despair. And she was about to commit suicide when somebody said to her, well, as a last resort, go to an ashram in India. So she did, and she learned there how to meditate, and she meditated and meditated. And gradually she learned to forgive the drunk driver who killed her family. And then she forgave God for letting this happen. And then one day she was sitting in the patio in a deep meditation, and when she awoke, she wasn't in the ashram anymore. She had ascended to the new Earth. So it can happen, and there are people who can make the ascension. And if I suddenly disappear off of this call, that's maybe what happened to me. I don't know.
If you ascend, do you? That means you also die here and go there, or does
you physically assume your physical body actually rises up? Yeah, and you end up at the new Earth in your physical body. So the new Earth is still on the physical plane. It's not the spirit side. It's not as high vibration, higher than Earth, but it's not as high as the spirit side. So the people there in the new Earth are physical entities, and their bodies eventually do die, and then their spirits leave and go to the spirit side. So it's a higher vibration on the physical plane, basically.
And if you shoot up, then like your wife will be looking around for you, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it'll be. I'll just suddenly disappear, and it'll be one of those things. Call the police and say, I report a missing person, and they'll never find me. I'm kidding. I'm not anywhere near ascending to the new Earth, but there have been people who have done it.
Did you learn anything about the Bible, Jesus, God, anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. Like when I was raised as a Catholic, they told me certain things about God. I found out from Albert that a lot of that is just not true. I refer to what you would call God as the source, the creator. And I did have a conversation on the spirit side with Jesus. He's a very wise, compassionate, very advanced soul. He's a master soul. He said that he came incarnated on planet Earth 2,000 years ago because humanity needed a kick in the pants to get us moving on the spiritual ladder, moving up. And so he incarnated. He was a master soul, and he had the ability to do his miracles. In the Bible it says that he turned water into wine, and he rose people from the dead and walked on water and that sort of thing. That actually did happen and it wasn't because God or the source was sort of manipulating things. It was because he had learned to focus his thoughts into powerful waves of energy. And he could create his miracles by doing that. And so he did all those things. There's been other people who've done miracles like Moses and, lots of stories in the Bible about people doing miracles. And that's just people who learn to focus their thoughts. And so it's like, a focused thought is like a laser beam compared to the beam from a flashlight, which is scattered. And so if you focus your thoughts, you can manipulate matter and energy. And we're all capable of doing that, except most of us don't know how. But Christ was one of those who did it. And so he incarnated. And the other thing I learned, which I know flies in the face of what the Christian church has said, is that he wasn't celibate. He was married to Mary Magdalene. They had 3 children. And his mother, Mary, was married to Joseph, of course, but she didn't have a virgin birth. She wasn't a virgin when he was born. She had regular sex relations with her husband Joseph, and they had other children as well. And so all these things, which aren't in the Bible because they were edited out of the scriptures, And the early fathers of the church decided that the best way to present the Catholic Church was to show that Jesus was celibate, never married, and that his mother Mary had him as a virgin birth. And so they just changed all the scriptures to reflect what they thought was best for the church. So that's quite amazing. I know a lot of people, there's probably a lot of Christians in your audience who'll say, that's a bunch of BS, but that's what I was told.
What about, there was something with the moon I thought was pretty interesting, and Neil Armstrong.
Oh yeah. One of the characters that I had a conversation with on the spirit side was Neil Armstrong, the first man of the moon, and he was. I can remember in '69, I was just glued to the TV set as he walked on the moon for the first time, so I was quite happy to meet him. And he said, this is quite interesting. He said that when they first landed on the moon, he had a telepathic communication from an ET, and the ET was they had a hidden base on the dark side of the moon. And this ET said, hi, Neil, welcome to the moon, and we're glad that you're here. They said, so he had a bit of a conversation with this ET. The ET says, whatever you do, don't tell Houston about this conversation, or they'll think you've gone crazy. And so he didn't. And then when he first stepped out down the ladder onto the moon, he was the first one there before Buzz Aldrin came. And he noticed that scrawled in the dust on the moon was a message that said, "Welcome to the moon, Neil Armstrong." And then he quickly brushed it away with his boot, and he never told anyone about it. He never told anyone because he didn't want to tarnish his reputation as being a straight up astronaut, a good old all-American boy. But he did tell me there because on the spirit side, nobody else is going to know. And I did put it in my book, and I hope that doesn't tarnish his reputation at all. But that just shows you that there are ETs around, and they have been around for a long time. And this one in particular communicated with Neil when he set foot on the moon, which is quite interesting.
So tell me about the QHHT and the other things besides the book that you have going on.
Well, QHHT is short for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And it was developed by Dolores Cannon, and she developed it over a period of like 40 years, perfected it. And the VQH is similar to QHHT, except it can be done remotely. And so what happens in a QHHT is that I will, for my clients, I will induce them into a very deep hypnotic trance called the theta level. And so we get them into the theta level trance, and then the first part of the induction is a past life regression. And it could be a past life, a parallel life, or a future life for this client. And we don't know where they're going. Their higher self will take them somewhere. Usually the past life they go to has some relevance to their current life, like there may be some unresolved karma from that past life that's still carried forward into this life, or there may be people from that past life who are in their current life. And so it's very interesting, and they can go anywhere. They could be as a human life on Earth, or as an animal, or even as an alien life form on another planet, and I've had those. So you never know where they're going. Very interesting. Second part is the best part, and that's where I summon their higher self, and I directly summon their higher self. The higher self will come through and channel through the client and speak directly, verbally, to answer the questions that the client has brought with them. And the client will ask questions like, well, a lot of it's personal questions like, am I in the right career? How do I find a life partner? How come I don't get along with my father-in-law or my brother? How can I find financial abundance, that kind of thing. And so the higher self will answer all these questions very directly. And it's all put on the recording, so the client will have those answers forever when they listen to the recording. And so it's a very, very interesting way for people to get some information that they've been, striving to find for years and years. And there's some amazing answers. Most of the answers are very brutally honest. I had one situation where a young lady was living in common law with a man for about 4 or 5 years. She had doubts about the relationship. When I asked that question to her higher self said, "He's a bum, kick him out." So you get some very, very candid answers, and it's very helpful for the people because they really sort of come away from the session saying, "Well, now I know where I should be going, what I should be doing with my life," and it's all very rewarding. And then sometimes the higher self can actually help them heal some of their physical afflictions if it's appropriate for the person. So it's very interesting. The sessions go like 4 to 5 hours, and everyone comes away feeling very refreshed, energized, and very happy with the answers they get from the higher self. even though sometimes they don't like the answers they get, but they're the honest answers.
What about the Akashic Records? You were there. What's that look like?
Oh, the Akashic Records is amazing. It's just like you can go in there and you can look at your all of your own past lives anywhere, whether it be at Earth or elsewhere, and you can look at anybody else's past life. So if you go there and you want to see somebody's past life, as many as you want, you can see them all in great detail. It's sort of like watching a movie in a 3D movie. Basically, you can watch the scenes. It's almost like you're right there, and you can fast forward and skip over years or whatever you want to do. It's really quite amazing. The Akashic Records have the records of every life that's ever been lived anywhere in the universe. So you can see any life, the history of the lives. You know, if you want to see what your family member, what kind of lives they had before, you can see them all. You can see all your lives. You can see famous people and what they've done before. So it's really quite amazing. And because you have an eternity to live, you can spend all the time you want in the Akashic Records looking up anybody's life that you want to see if you're curious about it. So it's really amazing.
What do you see when you look back?
Oh, I just think it was a crazy, hectic life. It was a very stressful life. I was always stressed out, a very typical Type A personality. I spent most of my time, like everyone else, chasing money and material goods kind of thing. And when I look back at it, I think, well, that's just nonsense. That's not what we should be doing. But Albert said that my life as a lawyer was a setup for meeting him and then transforming over to my current life, which is much different from my lawyer life. So it was. I can't say it's a mistake. It's just that I really am glad I'm no longer doing that, and I'm into my new transformative life here. And so that's just the way it is. I mean, I think it was. He said it was a setup for meeting him, and he actually told me that he and I planned the meeting before I incarnated.
Oh.
Except of course I don't remember. Yeah.
What's it all about?
Well, what he says to me is that one of the things that we should do is don't take life so seriously, because you can never go wrong or become lost. You're always going to go back to the spirit side when you die, no matter what you did. So he said, spend more time laughing, having fun, and smiling at everyone you see. Couldn't be happier having Albert come into my life, and my life post Albert is so much nicer, so much happier than when I was practicing law. There's no question about it. So I'm glad where I am. What I've learned is that when Albert suggests I do something, I should just do it, because you can't argue with spirit. No matter how much you try to dig your heels in and resist, spirit will eventually win. So I just, okay, Albert, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And he doesn't tell me in advance what he wants me to do. He'll just spring it on me, and away we go.
And the best way for someone to find their higher guide is?
Through meditation. Meditation. Sit quietly, quiet your mind. Then the messages from your spirits, which they are for your spirit guides, which they're always sending to you, will suddenly come through much clearer. You'll be able to understand them better and then act on them. So it's really a question of getting rid of the clutter of your mind so that their messages can come through clearly.